They filed me as a non-priority intake observer, which is a polite way of saying nobody expected me to matter to anything that happened in that wing. My transfer credentials had gone through 3 translation passes before they reached Kestrel Outpost, and somewhere in the second pass, trauma charge nurse, 29 years, became support staff, general. I didn't fight it. I'd learned a long time ago that fighting a form gets you nothing but a longer form. The Vitality Assessment Wing ran cadets through the index every morning before drills. A full-body scan, 4 minutes, no needles. Nothing that looked like medicine as I understood it. 6 cradles in a row, each one lined with a pale conductive gel that read temperature and pulse, and a dozen things I didn't have names for, all of it feeding into a column of soft blue light above the technician's station. The cadets treated it the way young people treat any morning ritual that's never once gone wrong for them. Bored, a little competitive about their numbers, the way soldiers get competitive about anything measurable. The Sovereign Vitality Index had been running that same scan, unmodified, for 311 years. It had a record it was proud of in the particular way instruments are proud, which is to say it had never once returned an ambiguous result, alive or not alive, renewal-worthy or non-renewal. It sorted cadets the way a scale sorts weight, and it had done that so cleanly for so long that Assessor Korath talked about it the way you'd talk about a colleague who never called in sick. He'd tell new intake officers, without any particular pride, that the index's calibration record was the reason Kestrel Outpost hadn't lost a misclassified cadet in longer than any living Keth Sorvani could remember. I believed him. I had no reason not to. My own days in the wing were quiet in a way I'd come to appreciate after 29 years of the opposite. I filled water pitchers that didn't need filling, restocked a supply closet nobody used, and stood in the observation alcove most mornings watching 6 cradles light up blue, one after another, clean as a metronome. It was the first job in my working life where nothing depended on me noticing anything. I'd earned that, or told myself I had. I was standing in the observation alcove doing exactly nothing. My actual assignment, most days, was refilling water and not touching anything, when a scheduling error routed me through the scan queue with the rest of the 6-cadet cohort. Nobody caught it until I was already in the cradle. By then the index had already started reading me, and it doesn't stop partway through. It isn't built to. I want to be clear that I wasn't doing anything unusual. I was standing still, breathing the way I've breathed in 100 rooms where the wrong kind of movement scares a family that's already scared enough. Slow, shallow, even. It's not a trick. It's 29 years of learning that your own body is a room other people read whether you mean them to or not, and that the kindest thing you can do at 3 in the morning is not let your face or your hands tell anyone the numbers are bad. The index read that stillness, and called it something else entirely. I found out later. Korath told me most of it afterward, in the flat voice his species uses when they're still deciding whether to be embarrassed, that sovereign biology doesn't have a death the way we mean it. They cycle, long stretches of activity, then a stage dormancy that can run months, sometimes years, during which every reading a Vesic body produces looks, to an untrained instrument, exactly like failure. Their whole medical architecture is built to tell the difference between a body powering down for a decade and a body stopping for good. Stillness, to them, is the dangerous state. Agitation is what alive looks like. The index had never had to consider a species where calm was the healthiest thing in the room. So it read my resting pulse, my controlled breath, my flat, unhurried affect, and it filed me under the oldest classification it had, terminal. Non-renewal. Do not extend further institutional investment. I heard the tone change before anyone told me what it meant. A high double chime, then a second one that didn't match the first, which I'd come to learn was the index's version of asking a question it had never had to ask. Korath came in fast, ridge crests running a color I hadn't seen on him before. Pale, almost colorless, which I gathered was not a good color for a Keth Sorvani man to be. He read the output over my cradle twice. Then a third time, one hand braced flat on the console like he expected the number to correct itself if he just gave it enough silence. Protocol, he told me, required offboarding within the hour for any non-renewal flag. No appeals process existed because the index had never needed one. He said this the way you'd explain a rule that had never once mattered to you personally until the exact minute it did. 2 technicians I didn't know by name were already pulling up my transfer file, looking for the right form to end whatever it was I was supposed to be at Kestrel. One of them kept glancing at me the way people glance at something they've been told is dying, but that is, inconveniently, still standing there refilling a water pitcher. I want to tell you I felt something large in that moment. I didn't. I've sat with a lot of numbers that were supposed to mean my life was ending, plenty of times, none of them mine, and the muscle that responds to that kind of news isn't panic, it's attention. I looked past Korath at the readout scrolling behind him, and what I saw wasn't a diagnosis of me. It was a system falling apart in real time. The index reran the scan, then reran it again, faster. The way you order another set of vitals when the first set doesn't make sense to you and you're hoping the machine made the mistake instead of the patient. Its outputs started disagreeing with themselves. Terminal, then indeterminate, then terminal again with a confidence value dropping each pass. I'd watched exactly that pattern before, on humans, on monitors, in rooms where the equipment was reading a body doing something it had never been calibrated to see, and trying to force it into a column that didn't exist yet. It's not going to find an answer by asking the same question louder, I said. Korath's ridge crests didn't move. It has never failed to classify a subject. Then it's about to have its first bad night, I said. I've had a few of those myself. They pass. He didn't understand me, not right away, and I didn't expect him to. What I did instead was what I would have done for any instrument screaming at a bedside that didn't need screaming at. I asked for the baseline data, the historical calibration set the whole index ran against. 311 years of Vesic and mixed species readings, every one of them built on the assumption that stillness trended toward dormancy, and dormancy trended toward gone. Nobody had ever fed it a body that got calmer as things got worse and meant it as a survival strategy, not a shutdown. I sat back down in the cradle, voluntarily this time, which made two wing technicians visibly uncomfortable, and let it run one more pass while I talked. Not to Korath, to the index. The way I've talked to 100 monitors that weren't listening, because sometimes narrating what your body is actually doing, out loud, slowly, is the only way to get anyone, human, machine, six-limbed and crystalline, to stop reading noise as a crisis. Heart rate's low because I've spent 3 decades training it low on purpose, I said. Breath shallow because loud breathing scares people who are already scared. None of this is decline. This is what it looks like when a body has decided not to alarm the room. The disagreement in its output slowed, then stopped. It didn't reclassify me. I want to be honest about that, because a clean ending isn't what happened. It generated a field that had never existed in 311 years of that instrument's operation. Category pending, subject stable, prior calibration insufficient. Korath stared at that field the way I imagine I'd stare at a chart that finally made sense after an hour of not making any sense at all. It has no name for what you are, he said. Most people don't, most days, I told him, and got up out of the cradle, because my shift wasn't over and somebody still needed the water refilled. Korath filed a calibration review that afternoon, the first one the vitality index had required since it was installed. He asked me, formally, if I'd consent to being part of the new baseline data. I told him I would, on the condition that nobody used the word specimen in the paperwork. He agreed, a little too quickly, in the way people agree to things they don't fully understand yet, but know better than to argue with. I never did get reclassified. My file still reads non-priority intake observer, category pending, and I've stopped waiting for that to change. Some things don't need a category. They just need somebody in the room who isn't afraid of being still.